A warm welcome to another edition of the National Agenda, your go-to political show where we discuss all the pressing national issues. You know that whenever we take our seat, then of course, it's time for us to uncover all the issues with regards to national topics that really matter to the nation. Today, we are here to discuss the OSP's investigation on the Strategic Mobilization Company Limited's contracts. I mean, in recent times, we know that there was an investigation ongoing, and this investigation had to do with the Ghana Airports Company Limited going into contract with a private firm by name Ivatex Logistics. And we understand that Ivatex Logistics has a connection or a link with the SML, Strategic Mobilization Company. And we understand that the contract was entered into force to allow Ivatex Company help the Ghana Airports Company do what we call revenue assurance. And in this case, what that meant was that, one party was going to see to it that all sort of revenues that was not uncovered was lost is recovered. But a lot of issues came up. We understand that nothing came up. No form of recovery was done by Ivatex. Now, there's another interesting story that is happening. And this time around, we understand that there has been an expansion of the contract. And the expansion is going all the way down to upstream oil drilling and oil production, and as well as gold mining companies. Now, it is a bit challenging and worrying that, yes, the OSP is investigating the first issue that came that was linked to SML. Nothing has been heard of it. It looks like the case has stalled. We have not heard anything as Ghanaians. And out of the blue, we are seeing that there is an expansion of scope of the work of the SML. Stay with us. Stay with us. I have in the studios with me a very interesting person, one that we know would help us discover or uncover all the issues that were hidden on the SML deal. My name is Samuel Fobi-Banfo. We'll be right back. Welcome back once again. Thank you for sticking and staying with us. Let me go straight to the point and introduce my guest for today. So I have in the studios with me Nazir Saeed, and he's somebody I call him the political commentator. Let me put it like that. He has on some occasions spoken on behalf of the incumbent government, and on other occasions he has spoken against the government, especially when it comes to issues that he felt was not done right. Nazir, thank you for honoring our invitation this time around.
Thank you for having me, Fobi.
It looks a bit challenging and a bit disturbing. We have heard what is happening with SML in terms of their relationship with Ivatex and the revenue assurance contract they entered into just to ensure that the Ghana Airports Company Limited recovers some lost revenue. We understand that nothing came out of it. Now, here's the case. We are also hearing that there has been an expansion in the contract, and as a result of that, allegedly, we are hearing that there's corruption attached to it, some sort of corruption scandals, and this time around, the Ghana Revenue Authority has been mentioned. I want to take your initial thoughts on all that is happening with the OSP and the SML deals.
All right, thank you very much, Fobi. Just as I do always, I'll send out greetings to the over 35 million well-meaning Ghanaians. Fobi, this matter is a nation-wrecking topic that any person of interest in this matter is also being subject to very critical investigations. Why do I say this? When you look at the figures that are coming out of the contract, they look as if they are one that could cripple some parts of our economy and enrich a selected few who in the past decided to run down this country. It is very unfortunate that we have to go down the line and try to retrieve many of these funds, to the extent that the exchequer of this entire republic is now living in asylum outside the country and cannot come to answer pertinent questions to this
And
matter.
that is very worrying, Nazir. Sorry that I had to come through. That's very worrying because we understand that all these things happened with the Ministry of Finance and some other, linked or collaborative bodies. So it is expected that the former finance minister would make himself available for investigations to carry on. And I find it a bit challenging looking at the stance of the OSP on all that is happening. It looks as though he wants to do the job, and in one end, it looks as though he's not ready for the job.
It's quite unfortunate. For the OSP's matter, I mean, that is what has come up at the latter. So I want us to tackle the issues holistically.
Okay.
And we'll have time as and when it evolved to the period of the OSP. I mean, when you mentioned the Evertex SML deal at the airport, that is just recent. That is in 2024. That is when that contract came about.
Yeah.
But you realize that there are antecedents. That somewhere 2019, 2020, that was when there was a whole upsurge in this SML deal where Manasseh Azure did this country a lot of good by exposing some of the breaches that had happened at that time. But I think many people didn't pay attention to it because you mean at that time in this country, journalists were not at liberty to come out with a lot of, even Anas, I remember Anas, we heard of one of his guys, Ahmed Swahili, being murdered. So it could tell you the tension in the country. So if Manasseh Azure was able to do us this good with the Fourth Estate, he deserves a lot of applause for that. In that period, we were told that a company from nowhere, a company that was established in 2017, had no track record of anything finance. They had no track record of any form of revenue assurance.
I mean, even on the point that we know that to some point the company did not even exist. They didn't even have up to 5 workers. And that is a big challenge. How does a company that did not even have the working force or the manpower get such a contract? Or was it a hoax?
So, Ofobi, it is obvious when we start talking about it and you're able to poke the holes in there, you know where some of these things came from. I mean, a lot of people in the industry have questioned significantly where this deal came from. So from established in 2017, when the ex-Wall administration took over, in 2019, from nowhere, a company with no experience whatsoever is being awarded a contract to give us revenue assurance in our upstream petroleum, upstream and down. Eventually, the upstream was added, downstream petroleum industry, with in consultation with the Ghana Revenue Authority, under the authority of the Minister for Finance and the ministry as a whole, that the downstream petroleum sector in this country, regardless of all the structures and systems they have in place at their BCs, you tell us that it is not enough and that they are losing revenue, where indeed, when it comes to the upstream, Petroleum Commission indeed, with regards to the interview and the engagements they had with Manasseh Azure, pointed out clearly that there was no level of reportage on leakages and lost revenue that's needed or warranted for their intervention. However, it is important that we have second checks, don't we?
Certainly.
But the staff of GRA and customs in these downstream petroleum sectors have made it clear to us that even the structure that SML came to implement at their, at their petroleum fields were not so important, such that the senior engineer in an interview with Manasseh Azure was questioned that the kind of machinery, the kind of non-contact meters that they have put there to record the volumes of oil that was being taken away, the volumes of oil that was being taken away. He mentioned that indeed their non-contact system that they have put in place is less reliable as compared to Ghana Standards Authority's contact meters that they had. And indeed, GRA themselves, in the engagement with the commissioner from Manasseh Azure, mentioned that they weren't taking the volumes or measurements that were coming from SML, but they were relying on the data that had been established by the Ghana Standards Authority, by the customs and the GRA, the old systems that was monitoring the volumes and what have you, are the same systems they are using. Now, it's not surprising to me that a company with no experience, a company that does not have the technical ability, a company that prompted out of nowhere is being given a contract to this tune. I mean, what is surprising out of all of this, we will come to the breaches and what have you. What is surprising out of all of this, that in June 2022, the Minister of Finance, through the Ghana Revenue Authority, wanted to extend their contract to a 10-year contract, such that annually, throughout their activities, they were also going to be taking charge of Ghana's gold and mineral resources.
But so what was the motive for that expansion? Because if what they were given initially, we had not seen anything out of it, on what grounds does the Ministry of Finance?
What is more surprising is that, unfortunately, they even had put out numbers that they were saving our petroleum sector 3 billion. I think in May 2021,
3 billion.
They made that projection. And before that, April, they made a projection that they were saving Ghana's petroleum sector 1.5 billion. But in an interview with the general manager, he mentioned that he wasn't even sure of those numbers on their websites, and they were an oversight because Manasseh Azure's investigation proved that the numbers that he put out there were not factual. And the staff from GRA and Customs had already mentioned that the increase in revenue was not as a result of any interventions, but it is normal that the rates of the fuel and coal goes up at a point in time. So it is very normal for them to see these fluctuations. So as a matter of fact, in June 2022, there were plans to extend their contract over a period of 10 years to also take charge of Ghana's mineral resources, do revenue assurance for our mineral industry, which made no sense because they had already been given a responsibility where they couldn't do anything about it. And indeed, in an interview with Sheikh Abdul Mustafa Hamid, former CEO of FDA, he mentioned that they had their own internal structures that were being used. They had an application where before even the oil companies go and reach, gather their volumes from their stocks, they had to go through a virtual process. That's all the oil companies were going through. So they had their own data of tracking any of these, the volumes that were coming out of their
So it's obvious that whatever SML was bringing on board was not needed.
It was absolutely...
Because one would definitely easily think or logically reason that for offshore petroleum and, oil companies to operate, the quantum of money they put, the amount of money they put into production. So you don't expect them not to have checks and balances in their system.
A GRA, a customs officer, even intimated that these oil companies are very serious about their business. And they're storing their oil with the government, they need a lot of assurance. So there's no way that these storing areas too, they also have to maintain their integrity such that whoever is investing in that oil will not come to you the next day if they come to you and you siphoned volumes of their fuel away from them. So they, even at the holding areas, have an integrity to maintain. As a matter of fact, the highest of standards are being put in place there. There's national security there. There are custom officers there. There are GRA officers there. So there's MPA has his own officers there. There's no way you can bypass these checks and come out and do something that is not proper. So they mentioned that they were also going to yield Ghana's mineral resources to them to also be conducting
mineral resources. You mean the gold, the
bauxite, or whatever we are mining out of this country, to SML to do revenue assurance and what have you for us. And we didn't know what intentionally they were going to do there. Do you know what the funny thing is? I've sent you a document where you look at page 21 of the compensations. They mentioned that 0.75% of the total gold produced in Ghana here, that will be the sum we'll be paying to SML.
0.75%.
0.75%. As of that period, Ghana was averaging about 3.7 million ounces of gold.
Wow.
In 2021, 2022. Same way, they said $0.75
per barrel
of our. That was when they wanted to yield our upstream petroleum sector also to them. $0.75 out of every barrel produced in Ghana is going to be the payment to them. And
That's huge.
And as of that time, Ghana was doing up 150 to 170 barrels of oil per day. And if per annum we are going to pay this amounts to them,
whether they recover something or not,
they deliver or not. And it's funny to know that in Manasseh's revelations, he mentioned that their works were not being measured, such that whether they deliver, they do not deliver, payments were automatic. such that payments of over 2.4 billion was made to SML for literally no work done.
I mean, the entire thing we understand is worth over $500 million.
So funny enough, the project, if it had come to pass, with regards to the upstream petroleum and the mineral resources of our country, 0.75% and $0.75 respectively, was going to yield them over $100 million per annum. And if this was going to continue for 5 years, you can imagine $500 million of taxpayers' money out of nowhere. Money that can be used to build the human capacity of this country would have gone to private pockets.
This is Ghana struggling to put up hospitals. This is Ghana struggling with the no bed syndrome. And this is Ghana struggling to even finish road constructions.
And it is funny.
And just around that same period, we have a big hole, a big swimming pool, if I should say. I mean,
it is quite unfortunate. And when you come up and you look at, I mean, it was no surprising that the president himself, out of Manasseh's revelation, sometime in 2022 himself, wanted to halt some of the SML deals. And in regards to the upstream, he made them halt a bit. But eventually, many of the other contracts were continued. It's very unfortunate that with regards to the Evertex and the SML at the airport, amongst the revelations from the Office of the Special Prosecutor, Kisi Ejabi, he mentioned that the Evertex company, which also had no experience, had no track record when it comes to auditing or finances, had shared a similar beneficial owner with SML in the person of Ivan Seduse. And this contract was a late contract that was awarded just before the elections in 2024. And there were attempts.
I mean, this falls in line with all the other ideologies, the formed ideologies behind the fact that it looks as though the incumbent government was trying to generate funds for their own.
I can't speak to that. I'll leave that to the Office of the Special Prosecutor to give us those revelations. But it's very unfortunate that days before elections, a contract of these sums is awarded to a company that shares a similar beneficial owner to SML. And it is funny that the OSP, out of many of their revelations, mentioned that when they looked at the staff that were presented in the contract for the Evertex, you could see similar names who were staff of SML in the same deal. Thing. How? And that the board of governors of the Ghana Airports Company Limited had no idea and gave no approval to this. It was sole source and the Public Procurement Act was breached. This is the same characteristics that is clouded in the SML case with regards to the offshore petroleum and all the other contracts that they were given. I mean, when you look at some of the things, one funny revelation I also made was that Mr. Christian Soti, who was the technical advisor in 2019 to the GRA Commissioner General, immediately resigned and became the general manager to SML. I do not need to paint the picture of cronyism, but I'm sure out of the revelations that will be brought out of this case and some of the names that are coming out, all of us can bear to the fact and make certain allusions ourselves. Now, one funny thing that the general manager of SML mentioned was that they do not tackle issues of diversion when it comes to downstream petroleum industry. They do not deal with issues with underreporting. Same way, they do not deal with issues
So then what are they doing?
Regards to dilution.
So what are they
doing? If you're not doing these three major things, these major irregularities with our downstream petroleum sector, then you have no business in Ghana's petroleum industry.
Because
there's no way you can assure us of revenue, you can measure and do any form of audit if you're not doing these major things. As the former CEO of MPA mentioned, Sheikh Abdul Mustafa Abid. Indeed, he mentioned that if, in any case, the MPA have their own system, which I mentioned, the ERDMS, Enterprise Relational Data Management System, same way with GRA's ICOMS. He mentioned that when people are making orders for volumes of fuel, they go through the ERDMS. And the ERDMS is linked with GRA's ICOMS, such that the volumes of fuel that is being recorded and taken out by the OMCs is going directly into GRA's data.
So they can also track the revenue.
Track the volumes that are coming out. And there's no way you can siphon anything away. And indeed, they also mentioned that they have their own tracking mechanisms. So if you're not doing any of these things, and you've come to put non-contact meters out there calculating the volumes, then you're not doing anything for the industry.
They were virtually not measuring anything.
It is quite unfortunate. I cannot speak to the fact that they were not measuring anything, but I'll leave them to. Now, many of the things that the OSP mentioned, the similar characteristics that the OSP alleged that the board of even GRA did not give approval for the contract.
Same as what happened with the board of the Ghana Airports Company Limited.
In a multi-year contract as well, there was no parliamentary approval, such that Parliament had no idea
of
the contracts that were being awarded to them. Next was about the breaching of the Public Procurement Acts, that there was no competitive tendering, it was a sole source contract. I mean, under certain circumstances, you can do sole sourcing, but not under such a circumstance. What kind of emergency warrants for sole sourcing when it comes to this? And when it comes to a work like this, that's their expertise is even, they probably be an underdog in the industry. I think a company that's starting from scratch, starting from zero.
Nazir, what I want to find out is that before the contract was given, was there ever an opportunity given to several companies?
No, it's unfortunate.
To tender in their application.
No. The Public Procurement Authority themselves mentioned that they had no clue of the contract with regards to SML.
So what is the OSP stance on these issues right now?
Where we stand now, we are at the crossroads. It's unfortunate. Now I see a lot of banter on the media. Nazir Saeed is alleging that the OSP was redundant all these years and hadn't started any intensive investigation on the matter. And that he believes that it's just January 2025 that the OSP is taking the matter to a different level.
Since 2018,
and that is the same argument that lawyer Martin Pebu and other concerned people are raising, that you do not watch a principal stakeholder in such a case. I mean, the first accused in the person of our former Finance Minister, Honorable Kenneth Oriata, leave the shores of this country, and now you start blaming security agencies and accuse them of not...
You could have prevented him from
anticipating them of not being supportive. Indeed, the NIB have released a statement that he never contacted them, and he has no grounds to say that they wouldn't have assisted him. So this is very preposterous and very worrying for us as a country to have seen this kind of rot happen under an entire administration for years and nothing was done about it.
So Nazir, let me find out. Thank you so much for that very informative submission. What I want to find out right now is that what does it mean for the country right now? Looking at the fact that we are unable to track down whatever the SML has done since 2018. And we understand that they have metamorphosed into a company called Ivatex. And it looks as though nothing is happening from the point of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. The key stakeholders were involved. One is expecting that they will be brought down to answer certain questions, and it looks as though nothing is happening. What does it mean for the country right now?
Phoebe, I'm very optimistic, and from where I sit, it is based on some of these things that Operation Recover or Loot, Oral, was one of their major campaign promises as a party.
But you know, Oral too has had its own challenges.
Yeah,
the fact that people believe that it had no constitutional mandate, the fact that people believe that the members of the Oral had their own parochial interests and all that, politically.
Phoebe, however, that is the reason why Oral was established. Oral is no more. They have done what the president mandated them to do. There are documents. There's a chunk of evidence that they are working on. We are working with law. Regardless of their political affiliation and their biases, we are going before the judicial system. We are going before a court of competent jurisdiction such that truth and facts shall come to light. I'm very optimistic that where we are at the case, I mean, we saw the Deputy Attorney General come make certain statements about wanting the docket from the OSP such that he also continues the case. Indeed, recently we have seen some arrests by the Office of the Special Prosecutor confiscating some items of the SML company. They've also taken him up, and I think they've also appealed, they've sent the case before Sraj and Co. So I'm sure gradually things would be done. The likes of Amisha Dai and the other people who are involved, they are all around, and I'm sure the case is going to continue, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. So far as we have people who continue to breathe down the neck of the government, I'm very optimistic that we are going to get results.
So do you think the OSP can do a good job on this one? Looking at what is already happening.
From where I sit, as we speak now, there are three or so petitions that have been forwarded to the Chief Justice on the kind of work he's doing. Personally, based on the revelations that Nazir Saeed has brought, that for us to have been in a country and since 2019, this rot is out there. And as early as 2024, 2023, Nazir Saeed had brought out a whole documentary on this SML deal And there were a lot of hula baloo on this matter. And the Office of the Special Prosecutor sat aloof and did nothing to have commenced the investigation in January 2025. I believe it's sheer incompetence, but he may have reasons, and I think there's been a back and forth between him and the people who are saying otherwise. Who knows? Maybe he actually started some work before. But I sit on a good side, and I'm very optimistic, and I hope and believe that he's actually doing a good job because from what we have seen, it's been more or lless like a talk show, either than actions.
Exactly.
And we are hoping that in the coming days he takes more action, and we see our former finance minister brought back home.
I was just about to ask that question. Are we seeing the former finance minister in this country anytime soon?
Maybe.
Because we cannot get to the root of all these things if he's not here to answer certain questions.
So I think that we are seeing a little rise in action such that now charges have been professed against him. The Attorney General is taking over that part of the docket to rather activate the red alert on him. And I think from there, now that charges have been leveled against him, we'll be able to extradite him back to the shores of Ghana.
All right. So what will be your recommendation? We would be going as soon as possible, but what will be your recommendation to the policymakers, the government? I'm sure they are watching us. What will be your recommendation for them or to them in this case?
As I have maintained, that I remain optimistic in the judicial system. I believe the Attorney General and his colleagues to do a yeoman's job. And indeed, for many who have said, many legal practitioners have mentioned that there are others who are present in the country, as charges have been leveled against them, they could start with them. But many have also argued that in the absence of the first respondent, who is the principal stakeholder in this case, you may as well be building castles in the air. So that is why it's very paramount that they get them. But however, I also believe that they should work with the people we have here, as and when some of these charges are being pushed on Honorable Foriata, as and when he comes to the country, he also have the opportunity to stand trial and answer many of these questions.
Wow, that's very interesting. We really appreciate you for those wonderful submissions. It is our hope that sooner than later, the culprit will be brought to book. And going forward, Nazir, last one. Does the government of the country, under the leadership of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, has a plan when it comes to giving out these kind of deals and contracts? Because it looks as though in times past, governments have given out deals without even allowing a number of companies, a number of entities to tender in their application. Because I know it's part of the norms that before a contract is given, service providers, and at least 3 of them would tender in their application for that particular contract. And then one is selected after consultations. So does the government of Ghana, under the leadership of John Dramani Mahama, have a plan going forward?
So as a country on our own, we have a plan.
And what is that plan?
That's the Public Procurement Act.
Okay. And do we follow it? We have not followed any of this.
Many times this has been followed, and it has been spelled out clearly that for government contracts, projects, even purchases, capex or what have you, you should open up for competitive tendering. Because there's competitive advantage in this. So everybody would want, as government, you would want to get the best of deals. So I'm sure you have seen in recent times, Honorable Minister for Roads, Honorable Kwame Abuja, when it came to the conversation about bringing back electronic tolls, he opened up and there was a bid to competitive tendering for as many people as possible for the best and most efficient system that will be reliable for Ghana as a country. And I'm sure many of the other agencies that will be giving out contracts are going to go by this. Now, you should note that the president on many occasions has cautioned the members of his government that if you go astray and commit yourself in such manner, you'll be used as a scapegoat. This is a legacy.
Is this just not the fear of being punished when they are in opposition, or is this he admonishing them to do what is good for the country?
Admonishing them to do what is good for the country. And Ofobi, it is because of outliers that is why we prefer punishments. So indeed, definitely in any society, you get an outlier. Social conformity cannot be streamlined. You get people who are falling out. I mean, the system of sociology, you know, the outlier system. So people will go out of the line. So you need to
the innovators who would want to use their own means to get to
amass unnecessary words. So it is important that we also try to constantly remind them and make them aware of what His Excellency the President can do. We've seen some similar in his past administrations. So anybody in this administration is also very vigilant and careful that they do not fall astray and become the scapegoats in this matter. So I believe everybody throughout, from the length and breadth of the country, in every sector of the economy, is going to be very, very strict when it comes to the PPA Act and all other important actions, legal constraints, legal actions that have to be taken to make sure that all forms of procurement, buying and selling, contracting and what have you is done in the best of principles and practices.
All right. Thank you so much, Nazir. That was a very insightful conversation I've had with you. We hope and pray that whatever happens on the same SML matter would be one that the nation as a whole would appreciate it. We want to see Ghana get to the top. We want to see Ghana become great and strong, just like we've always professed in our national anthem. We'll follow the story keenly, and when there's an update, we'll come back. We'll sit down and then delve deeper into it.
Sure.
So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, my brother.
Viewers, this is where we draw the curtains down on today's episode of the National Agenda. We want to make a clarion call to our leaders out there. Let it not be said that we sat aloof and watched some people put taxpayers' money into their pockets and it went unanswered. Office of the Special Prosecutor, we call on you. We know that you are doing your very possible best to ensure that people that do not do what is expected of them are brought to book. However, our worry is that things are delaying. We are calling on you. We know that you're a man of competence. Please, let us hear from you as soon as possible with regards to the SML deals. Because this is something we cannot entertain as a country. How is it that we are paying compensations, we are making payments to SML for nothing, for no job done? They have nothing to show, but then we are making resource allocations to them. $0.75 per barrel. So even if you are producing 100 barrels in a day, that is huge money. And this is taxpayers' money going away like that. But I'm worried because how is it that we already have a system, ICOMS with GRA and that of the NPA, and yet we go on to give a contract to a private company that is doing something that is not even in tandem with what we already have? Please, we beg you. If it means that we call all those perpetrators to book, Attorney General, Office of the Special Prosecutor, all of you, please. If it means that we bring the former finance minister back to the country to answer questions, let's do it now. Anyway, viewers, let's get interactive on all our social media handles. On YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, the National Agenda. Please let me know what your comments are on this issue. Whatever you know on this matter, if it's a document, whatever it is, please put it there. And we'll do our possible best to let everybody know about what we are saying. We'll do our possible best to push and ensure that the government will sit up and do what is expected of them. I mean, let's not take it from them that they are doing their best. But, His Excellency, you are a man of competence. Please, we want to see the finality of this issue as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Anyway, this has been the National Agenda. My name is Samuel. Seeing you in the next episode.